Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. And yes, for those of you that I think we've got one or two here that might have missed last week's. Obviously, as always, the recording is up in the Facebook group. And yeah, I think there's one or two people who still haven't joined the Facebook group. If you please could, because that is where we are sharing all resources and videos. I do appreciate that, we're all in numerous groups, but it is the one place it's easiest for us to manage to make sure that everyone's getting everything. So, yes, shall we start off with a review of last week?
Yes, but I just want to say hello to everybody as well. So hi everyone, Mel, Janet, Jan, Kimberly, Jill, Matthew, and I assume Belinda's in there somewhere, maybe. And Carolyn, Krista, Anne, Megan, and Scarlett. Hello, thank you for joining us today. There. Hey. So, welcome to today. And as you know, it's a fear of leaving your comfort zone. And before we get into that, I just want to do a quick review of last week, which was safety and resistance. And this is one of our foundation topics. And as we covered that it's the elephant, when we had the ant and the elephant analogy, safety and resistance is the elephant, so that if we don't do the work on that, we can be trying to change as much as we can with personal development, and we're not going to go anywhere because those two things kind of hold us back. We looked at resistance in a slightly different way, rather than trying to demonize it. We thought it's something that's trying to keep us safe. And we looked at the relationship between safety and resistance and safety. And then we did some tapping on resistance and letting go. So I really just wanted to open up the room to see if there were any questions or shares or feedback from last week's session before we sort of crack into this one. So anybody want to say anything? Matt.
Hey, g'day everybody.
Hey.
It's put into practice a few times and really surprised, feeling sort of a little down on myself about a project I'm working on that I didn't think that, that negative self-talk gets you in a little bit of a spiral sort of thing at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, while I was driving, obviously I did close my eyes for it. But yeah, just quickly went through three rounds, and yeah, by the time I got to Belinda's house, it's sort of all that had gone, and I was feeling a lot more confident in it. It's really good, so I can attest to that. And also, just having a bit of a down. I've had quite a stressful couple of weeks with family stuff, and it's my go-to thing, just to sort of to clear crap out, if that's okay to say. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's awesome.
Thank you, Matt, for that share. That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you. So, Jan.
Now that we're 3 weeks into this and we got that extra bonus last week from our EMT thing, I'm finding they don't make sense, but I'm having the dreams. You had spoken about that in the first session. They truly don't make any sense. So I don't know what it is leading, but I also, because I've been very committed to doing this tapping in addition to the other things, and it's opening up stuff. I realize that as I have an attachment that then is a resistance kind of thing to not being totally independent. And then all of a sudden, all of this stuff has been floating my way to see that that's a limiting belief that's deep inside of me, instead of it's just being, you've always just done it. And because it's easier to do it yourself, and you're expected to do it all. So it's all of a sudden, really, in the last 3 days, a huge unraveling of something that's within to embellish out. So Wow. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jan. And you mentioned you know, sort of the dreams and you know all of these sort of belief shifting. That is kind of what happens. And I think when you have a lot of dreams coming up, it's often your unconscious communicating to you, and it's like stuff coming to the surface again. You know, things that have been held in your body for so long, just coming to your unconscious. I think just observe them. I mean, sometimes we can get attached to sort of interpreting dreams and what do they mean and, you know, all of this. But I would say just observe. And, you know, that's wonderful if you feel like you're making that things are happening, you know, things are shifting. And we're not even halfway yet.
Oh, I know.
And
Anything can happen.
And another part of that is that actually one of the functions that happens while we sleep, and it's one of the things that we need sleep for, is a kind of a refiling process goes on in our head. So it could very well be something along the lines that as you're doing the work and as you're starting to look in those dusty boxes in the attic and you're starting to take stuff out of one into the other and various other things, there's this activity going on in your head that sort of, you know, starting those new neural connections and a bit of neuroplasticity going on in there. And it could just be, you know, disturbed sleep or a certain amount of restless sleep could be a side effect from that actual physical process going on as well.
Because that is truly a large part of it.
Mm.
It's there's things that all of a sudden going through EMF, I realized that I was not a vulnerable person. You know, only when I wanted to be, and I could put it in, like my grandmother always said, I should have been an actress, and but it's an uncanny, and Mel knows this. She was with me, but it's uncanny how all of a sudden there's just stories within me that are piling out, and I'm writing, and I go like, that is, I'm this way because of that. And it's neither good nor bad. It just is. And it's shocking. And it's been in the last couple of weeks that the intensity of this has hit.
Yeah.
And I'm emotional. I'm not emotional. I mean, I cry. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. So just a quick hello to Deb and Therese, and hello, guys. And we'll go to Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi everyone. So I feel like the tapping has been the missing piece to my my regular routine. I am using it like 2-3 times a day. So in the morning, if in the day as needed, and on an evening as well. I have been working for some with something in particular in terms of like connecting with my partner, and there's still just the fear there, like a healthy connection. And we've been together nearly 3 years, and my head still tries to play tricks on me. And from the group last week, I realized I was trying to solve it from by me. In my mind, I was trying to psychologically correct it, and then I'm just creating more and more of it. So the tapping now, I really do feel like I'm intercepting the loop of like the head mess, so to speak. And do definitely feel like so it's helping me in the moment, but I definitely feel like dealing with it longer term, it is going to be very, very helpful. Yeah, so it's a very missing piece to a large puzzle, I do find. Yeah, so it's been great.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kimberly. That's thank you for that. Thank you for that share. That's beautiful. Thank you. You. Hi, Belinda. Yeah, yeah. We go to Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn.
I think I just wanted to share that this week, first of all, I've really felt pressure over my chest, like, and I felt imbalance. Like, I've really noticed that I'm like very easily triggered by my kids, and I'm getting a mood and stuff. So I've been wondering if that is the tapping or the stars or whatever, but I really have had the opportunity to mirror back how I used to feel. And it's just interesting, and also to feel hijacked by a system. And before, when I've felt like this, I got stuck in my head. And due to the process here in this program, I'm starting to notice how my body is feeling. So it's a different run thinking, what's wrong? What can I do with my mind? I start tuning into, oh, my body feels tense. Oh, I can feel a stress or a pressure here in my chest, rather than going into my mind trying to solve it. So I've just become more body aware, I think. And I'm not proud of how I've showed up this weekend, and yet still I've done my very best. But it's really, really interesting, because I have done some other things, and Sebastian Nishi knows this as well. We're using a patch, and this patch has just completely calmed down my nervous system. So now, to feel like I used to do, when that feels unfamiliar, is a victory in itself. But it's really sad to watch and observe that this is the state I was in constantly before, and I didn't know how to switch it off. So yeah, I'm not sure what is causing it, but it's a really interesting body awareness observation that's going on. Thank you for giving me that awareness.
Thank you for that, Carolyn. And I think that's one of the sort of purposes of this course as well, is to get us to move from the head, to the body, because that's where the deep things are that are stored. And the things that are holding us back are deep things. If we could just intellectualize these things, it would be easy. But we've done the intellectualization, it hasn't fully worked. And that's why the next step is to go to the body. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
Cool. So before we move on, I just wanted to say that in terms of notes for the course, so Ish and I, we're setting the intention to get notes out for module 3 and module 2 at some point over the next few days this week, and then we'll catch up with module 1 as well. And then going forwards, I'm not sure how clear we'll be in terms of getting notes out before the call, in time for the call, but there'll certainly be notes that you can have afterwards that you can then use during the week for sort of catch up reflections and so forth. So bear with us on that. That is something we're working on and have full intention of putting together. So for this call, what we wanted to do is just give an understanding of what is a comfort zone, understand why we have them, what the impacts of them are, and yeah, I'm sure you've all got ideas of that. We're going to sort of expand on those. How we can reframe the understanding of a comfort zone and effectively reframe our relationship to resistance and the comfort zone itself, and how to sort of navigate it, how to navigate our relationship to it, and sort of find ways to work with it, right, rather than necessarily resist it. But before we get going, can I just ask, and you can put answers in the chat, when you hear the term comfort zone, what does it mean to you? In terms of, what gains do you think you get from your comfort zone, or secondary gains if we're talking about the EMS stuff? Okay. Yes, there's a lot of basically feeling safety, and a lot of appreciation of not growing, not reaching full potential. Cool. So we're going to touch into a lot of that stuff, I think. Yeah, reduced anxiety. So managing our feelings puts me in an unreal lull. Yeah, I can relate to that one. In a way, certainty yet stuck. So uncertainty about the future, but certain in the now. Yeah. I think that all ties in quite nicely with some of the stuff we've got coming, actually. Cool. You're on mute.
So there's great answers in there, and yeah, very much ones that certainly I can relate to, as well. But I just want to tell you about a wonderful quote I heard last week, and I just really wanted to share it with you guys. Have any of you heard of Peter Crone? Yeah, so not Peter Sage, but Peter Crone. He's the other Peter that I think is amazing. And I heard him say in one of his podcasts, and it was like a paching moment. So people say that they are scared of the unknown. The unknown is the unknown. People are not scared of the unknown. They are fearful of what their brain is predicting based on their past hurts and fears that could happen in the unknown. Shall I say it again? I had to listen to it a few times. So people say that they are scared of the unknown. The unknown is the unknown. People are not scared of the unknown. They are fearful of what their brain is predicting based on their past hurts and fears that could happen in the unknown. So I think you put that in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so last week we talked about comfort zone, familiar zone, the known zone, right? And this is both avoiding the fear of the unknown and avoiding the fear of experiencing things that link us to past traumas. So, okay, and what it's effectively doing is creating this limbo space, which we're going to touch on a bit more. But we're wired to stay in our comfort zone because we see it as a safe place, because our brains are wired to keep us safe, right? Self-protecting, and this is basically the self-protection mechanisms that are helping us. They help us avoid re-experiencing or feelings and emotions that we believe will link us to or have give us the same emotions that we've had in the past around uncomfortable or traumatic experiences, right? It is basically a self-imposed construct, right? So where we say it's it's protecting us, it's almost kind of protecting us from a false truth.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of our brains and our kind of heart or soul in this, when the put it into context in a comfort zone. So I just want you to imagine we've got our brain and we've got our kind of heart here. And our brains are wired for safety and comfort and survival. As we talked about last week, it's all about staying safe and in the known. And our hearts are wired for growth and contribution. That our souls are wired for growth and contribution. And our hearts speak the language of the soul, i.e., in whispers and intuitive senses and feelings. Whether our minds, our brain, is all about the human experience, and it's about survival, and it's about safety, and it doesn't care about us being happy or contributing or growing. Its pure purpose is to keep us safe. And it speaks in language. And language, as we know, is louder and it's stronger. And we have all been conditioned to prioritize language over our kind of feelings and intuition. And I think most of us can probably relate to that, in our education system and being conditioned by our caregivers and society. It's like because our feelings and intuition is so subtle, it's always drowned out by loudness. And we live in a loud society, so we tend to sort of listen to the mind a little bit more. But what this means is that both are communicating, but we end up getting inner conflict. So our heart knows what we want to do. Our heart to our heart, there is a purpose, why we're here. And our brain wants to keep us safe. So it imposes these constructs around us that we call, a comfort zone. If we really tune into what our heart wants, what we feel passionate about, we will feel that we're being guided. But if we listen to this, which is our brain all the time, we will just be listening to those sort of self-protection mechanisms that are there to stop us from experiencing the unknown and experiencing past traumas, the feelings that we got from past traumas, experiencing them again. So when you've got this kind of conflict going on, your heart wants you to step into what it is you're here to do, but your brain is sort of telling you, your mind is telling you not to. We get that feeling of being stuck, being in limbo. And that can be an extremely frustrating feeling. It can lead us to feeling stuck. It can lead us to feel unfulfilled, all of which are unpleasant symptoms. Now, I know I felt like that before. Can anyone else relate to sort of feeling like that? Stuck, unfulfilled, not knowing, how to get to where they're meant to go. The other consequences of our comfort zone, which I haven't yet mentioned, it's not just about us. It's easy to say what we are going to do, but we also know that it has effects on other things around us. It has effects on our relationships, our daily routines, our finances, our health. So we also know deep down that if we're going to be pushing our comfort zone and stepping into what it is we're here to do, it won't just affect us, it will affect these factors around. And that is another reason why we kind of feel a little bit fearful of moving forward, because it's one thing when it's our own anxiety, but when you start then thinking about the anxiety of it affecting everyone and everything else, that just extrapolates that anxiety. And it's just anxiety. The mind is just projecting anxiety. Does that make sense, what I was saying between the head and the heart? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a bit like so in the personal development world, particularly in EMF, we talk about having a strong enough why. We talk about have an emotional attachment to your why and everything else. Now, just put your physical hands, not your digital hand, put your physical hand up if you've done that work of going, right, this is my why, this is my passion. I've now built up the emotions behind that passion, and it's lasted a few days, maybe a week, and then all of a sudden it's died off again. Yeah, and it almost feels like in order to keep that why alive, it's going to take persistent action, persistent work to keep that belief alive, which is effectively by me activity to try and keep our why alive. So in the fact then it's by me means we're holding ourselves to a low level of consciousness, right? So as we said in the very first call, the one thing that can actually eat away at our why is doubt. And the main thing that feeds our doubt is our limiting beliefs. And this is where the bit between the heart, which is the why is ideally a heart-led, this is something I really want to do. The doubt is the chatter that comes in from the brain, right? So, and the challenge we have here is, as we're going to cover again a bit later, is that we can question our heart with thought because we use language, but we can't. It's very difficult to question our thoughts with our heart because it only uses feeling, which is what gives the language, it is what gives the brain the power in terms of the human experience, right? So how can we reframe our understanding? So how can we change our relationship to it all? So we have to consider that our limiting beliefs are basically safety mechanisms that are keeping us safe from things that are not real threats. 99% of the time in the real world, they're not real threats, right? In terms of our limiting beliefs, they're never really real threats, right? So staying in the comfort zone is like, it's a bit like keeping, if you've got some money in a savings account where you've got like minimal or zero savings, as you know, when not so long ago interest rates were really, really low, right? Might feel nice and safe that you've got some money put away. But with inflation going on, in reality, the rest of the world is moving on, value of things are changing. So what you've got in your savings account in terms of the real world goes down. So you're not even getting left behind. You're not even making more money. compared to everything else, you're kind of moving backwards. And to me, that's what being in your safety zone is like. Right? You're staying in your safety zone out of a place of comfort. Meanwhile, where you could have been moving to is that inflationary piece. Right? So it's actually our safety zone is actually not only not keeping us safe, it's holding us back from what we're meant to be, right? So we kind of think then that we know what the 6 human needs are, right? So 4 of them are ego-based and 2 of them are spirit-based. Spirit-based ones are growth and contribution. Yeah. So when we feel unfulfilled, it's because we're not satisfying those two heartfelt human needs, right? So the comfort zone is where we refrain from growth to stay in the comfort, to stay feeling safe with the familiar. But the only way to find fulfillment is to step out of our comfort zone, right? Through growth. And even to contribution and growth to me, especially with the work we're wanting to do as EMTs, okay, we need to step into that place of growth so that we can then provide the service that we're wanting to provide in terms of, growing global consciousness. So in that respect, expanding our comfort zone actually raises our level of consciousness. Because by expanding our comfort zone, we're actually dropping weights off the basket on the hot air balloon, so we can rise, right? But staying in our comfort zone, when we have activities of trying to keep our passion alive, we're having to do it from a very binary place. So staying in our comfort zone is actually tethering, as we again explained in the first module. It's effectively tethering us to the ground, right? The other thing to think about in terms of resistance is, who's a fan of scary movies? No, not a fan of scary movies. But we've all seen scary movies, right? If you were to take the scary scene, that final scene from a scary movie in isolation and just watch that, it actually wouldn't be that scary. What's scary is the lead up, the anticipation and the suspense that keeps us going, right? So another example, I really hate balloons popping. Well, actually, no, I don't hate balloons popping. I hate the thought of balloons popping. When they pop, I'm fine. But when my kids got a balloon, or when they were little and they had a balloon, just the anticipation of it popping used to just drive me insane. I just had to leave the room. Right. So it's the same with our limiting beliefs. It's not this relates to the Peter Crone and quote earlier as well. It's not the stepping out of the limiting belief or stepping out of the fear that's actually the hardest bit. It's the anticipation we create for ourselves, the chatter, the I'm not good enough bit that goes on sometimes subconsciously. That's the harder bit to go through. Okay, so, again, not a desperately scary movie, but might have been back in the day in the 70s, but who remembers Jaws, the film with the shark, right? Now, if you were to just see the scene of a shark coming out of the water, bosh, nothing particularly scary there, right? But when you apply the anticipation, the unknowing, are they going to see the shark? Are they not? Are they going to get eaten? Are they not? With the music as well, yeah, that's creating a suspense. That's the challenging bit that we face when it comes to trying to step out of our comfort zone. It's not so much the stepping out itself, it's the challenge. Does that make sense? So if we can link into that and tune into that and accept that actually within us, it's the suspense in terms of relating to the uncertainty of what could happen. That's the scary bit. It's not necessarily taking the steps in the action.
So that's made me think about scary films again, which I really didn't want to do. But yes, you're right. And it reminds me actually when I used to watch, I did used to watch them, was it Nightmare on Elm Street? I remember being terrified of that film when I was a teenager. Really, really scared because it's the one where if you fall asleep, bad things happen. And of course, you can't not go to sleep. And I remember having to watch a show which is the making of it to kind of deconstruct the scariness of that. And then after that, it never felt the same again. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. Before I sort of go on, I just really want to just check in and see if there are any, because there's quite a few things we've just talked about there. Any questions? Any points that want clarification? Anything? Now's your chance. Is everyone with us so far? No? Yeah.
What?
Hey, Belinda.
Hi. In us talking this morning, we're saying about the fears. I think Carolyn was saying about the physical side of things. I'm just thinking of I don't like heights. Just only certain circumstances. Usually sheer drops. And even if there's a glass barrier in front of me, I can't go near it, and I physically get a sort of pang in right low in my gut, and I can't control that. And I want to get over it. My way of getting over it is by crawling on the ground, and I can do it. For some reason, it makes me feel safer to be on the ground. But yeah, I'd like to overcome that. I mean, that's a simple thing. There are other much more major things, but it reminded me of that situation.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people are frightened of heights because fear of falling is one of our inherent fears. So and also people will often have had a bad experience with heights. Something bad will have happened. I mean, my husband, he's terrified of heights, and it's because he got stuck in a tree when he was 6 or something. And ever since then, he's just been terrified of heights. So, often there can be things that lead to it, but it is possible to get over it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, anyone else, or shall I move on? Jill.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, that was important that what you said, Sebastian, about, it's the anticipation when you think something's going to happen and you're fearful of it. And it's that anticipation of what's going to happen, which I hadn't thought about it in that aspect before. I mean, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, there are some things I've been doing, like, the same thing when something unpleasant is about to happen, and I'm going, okay, there's an alternative to this. How can I think about this differently? And I do, and it's more successful that way, that I'm not as fearful of approaching that particular situation. And one example is watching a movie and it's got some gory scenes in it or something, like doctors in the operating room and all this blood and everything, and I just go, okay, well, that's really just fake blood. So, it just lowers the fear and everything. So, just getting more in that habit of approaching it like that, I find it's better to view it that way. So just wanted to add that to you, and thank you for saying all that. And your great words too, Ishi. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill. Okay. Carolyn.
Which I always have to bring my mom up, but just to say, this is really interesting because I was wondering, my mom is constantly worrying. She's always worrying if she thinks negative, and she's so stressed, right? And I've been thinking for many years, how on earth, when something really will happen, what is she gonna do? And the fact is, when there is something real happen, then she's really calm. This is actually explaining that, because it's like she's, the anticipation of what could have happened is worse, and she's actually training herself to the actual situation. So when it happens, it's not there's been really big events, like the dog was just chewed up by a big other dog, and the intestines and everything was hanging out, and she didn't really get any scar mentally or anything from that. And it's just interesting to see how the fear, the it's just, yeah, it's just really interesting. I think it has to do with this that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I think people who've got sort of wired nervous systems, they will probably find that themselves sort of in that anticipatory role and kind of thinking about, what it is that that could be coming, almost their anxiety, their imagination goes a little bit crazy. And it's because our nervous system doesn't like the unknown. And, we are wired to believe that it's a threat. Therefore, the mind gets involved and then tries to predict what might happen. And it will often try and predict, negative things because it's trying to keep us safe. It's better that we, from our ancestors' point of view, if they saw if they around us this, if they saw a stick and thought it was a snake and ran away, they would still be alive. Whereas if they saw a snake and thought it was a stick, they probably wouldn't be alive. So it's better to sort of almost assume the worst. So it's the same with the comfort zone when we're sort of thinking what could happen. We are wired to sometimes think of the worst. But thank you, Carolyn, for that. Thank you. I have a bit of a reflective exercise for you guys. I want you to invite you to think of a time. Hang on. Apologies, I've got. Yeah, where in our lives, in our lives previously, we have thought about doing something that we thought we can't do, and then we've gone and done it, or we've been too scared to do something, and then we've gone and done it. Yeah, can you think of a time when that's happened to you, when you've had something in front of you and you just thought, I can't do this, it's too hard or it's too scary, but you've just made yourself do it anyway? Can you think about sort of take yourself back to that time and maybe what that thing was, go back there, and how did you feel before approaching it, and how did you feel afterwards? Yeah, has everyone sort of got something or can go there, remember a time when that happened? Yeah, okay. So that's shown that you have done it before. You have done it before. You've had something in front of you, you got through it, and you're still here now. Another time, another opportunity to sort of reflect is when a time when you didn't have time to think about something, you just had to go and do it. It's almost like your instinct had to make you do something before the mind got in the way and started predicting why you shouldn't do it, or why you can't do it, or why it's too scary to do it. Yeah.
Did we want to invite people to share their thoughts before we dive into what we think that demonstrates?
Jill.
Yeah, well, I call myself kind of the big procrastinator because I just, there are things I'm just fearful. I mean, it could be something so simple, just like, okay, I know the bills are coming in and I need to sit down and pay them. And I keep putting it off. I go, okay, I know the deadline's coming up, so I better sit down and do it. So it's so silly sometimes, and I'm actually getting better at this, but to just have that fear and just keep putting it off until I have to sit down and do it. Yeah, because I know the consequence isn't that good. If I don't pay my electric bill, they're going to turn off the electricity. So, I better pay it on time. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the little things that come up that the procrastination on it is just unbelievable. And then once I get it done, I go, well, that wasn't hard at all. I mean, why didn't I do it sooner? So it's I feel like it's just developing that non-fear attitude, just trying to just get it done. I mean, just take the emotion out of it. So yeah, thanks. I just wanted to share that.
I can relate to that a lot because I have the same every year when it comes to doing my taxes. And every year I promise my accountant I'll send them in good time, and literally 2 days before they've got to be sorted, I'm like, I'm really sorry, but you know. And what actually happens there is the time limit becomes a point of accountability. Right. So and the accountability then, I've got to get this done or there are strong consequences, then actually becomes stronger than your point of procrastination. And that's the interesting thing, because your brain can go through this process of, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, I don't want to face the reality of my finances, until you get to the point where it's like you absolutely have to. And then it's like, and that's almost taking us into the second example then of, I've got to do it, so it just ought to be done. And then afterwards, as you say, you often feel, yeah, it wasn't so bad once you just sit down and actually do it. Deb.
Hello. I wanted to share, I feel like I have a contradictory personality. Where I'm always like, I'm up for anything. What are we doing, right? And then things come up where I'm afraid. So 2 experiences that came up for me, all happened after going through EMF. One was one traveling, just giving myself permission to travel, and then traveling across the globe by myself, even though I've never even really traveled by myself, like anywhere other than driving in car. So, but I wanted to do it so much that I was just like, you're just getting on a plane going somewhere, right? So I did that. And along the way, I kind of chuckled because I feel like all of the things that could go wrong did go wrong, and I was still okay. Like I landed in an airport. I had talked to everybody about my credit cards, my phone, right? I'm like, listen, I'm leaving the country. I don't want you to turn my credit cards off. I want my phone to work. And they're like, you'll be fine. Well, guess what? The phone didn't work the way it should. My credit cards were shut down. I missed flights, lost my luggage, like absolutely everything that could go wrong went wrong. And yet everything was absolutely fine when I was done. So I guess our fears are bigger than they need to be. And that's what I learned. And so it makes it easier then to do smaller things, because you're like, well, at least I'm not going to get lost in another country, or, like the downside isn't as bad. And so the other thing I did that was very scary, also last year, I volunteered to do a presentation at a conference for my peers. And I have never spoken in any event like this, but I was like, I'm just going to do it. And not very many people showed up, which I was like, oh, thank goodness. So it wasn't overwhelming. But the people who showed up were very engaged and like asked me questions. And even afterwards were asking for more input from me. So yeah, facing our fears, doing the things that scare us. When you do it, you might get a little negative, but more than not, I think you'll get positives. And then that gives you the courage to try the next scary thing. So thank you.
That's touching on some of the stuff we're going to cover a bit later actually as well. So I'll try and remember to tie back into that when we get to it. Thanks, Deb. Next on my screen is Scarlett.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, cool. I had to keep my video off because we've got cruddy weather. My internet's spotty. I have been terrified of spiders for over 30 years. If they get on me, I scream like a little girl and dribble. Needless to say, we don't get along. They have 8 legs. They spit their home out of their butt and they drink blood. Not cool. So my husband approached me about a month ago and said, hey, these little jumping spiders that are such a trend right now, they're so cute. Can we get one? Oh, hell no. That was my response. And the anxiety that built in my chest of him just even asking, it was like, dude, you know, this is my fear. Like my one fear, like other things make me uncomfortable. This is my fear. You're kidding me. And I just stewed on it and could not believe he even asked. But then I started thinking about it and I'm like, you had a bad instance when you were 10 years old. One stupid spider scared you. You had one little thing happen and now you've spent 30 years letting it dominate you. And I started thinking about the video in the training, that one of the bonus videos in the EMF where the preacher's saying, you know, you let this person dominate your life over a 5-minute thing. Like you lost this many years of your life to this person who betrayed you or did you wrong. Well, I let that spider take that many years of my life. And I'm just sitting there thinking, boy, this is silly. So over the weekend, I told my husband he could get a pet spider, and I'm going to get a pet spider, and I'm going to teach myself to be able to deal with it. But I'm still feeling a little apprehension, but I'm doing it. I figure I better jump in. But I think it's emotions. We attach so many stinking emotions to everything. If we cut it back to what is the base of it, a spider made a weird sound at me in a shed. That's it. And I reacted to it like a big buffoon for 30 years. Like, yeah. So that's kind of my share. If we break it down, and then the tapping has helped me with staying calm every time I've gotten anxious about thinking about it. So, yeah. So that's my little silly share for the day.
But
Thanks.
yeah, great share. And actually the thing is with this is that, you know, we talk about phobias. Phobias are often quite an irrational thing, right? Because we have a sort of emotional reaction to something that relates to a fear that we have. And that is pretty much, although it may not be as extreme, that's pretty much exactly the same as what a limiting belief is. We are avoiding the emotional reaction that we have that we've associated with fear in the past. So it's pretty much the same dynamic. It's just that when it comes to phobias, it's a lot more clear as to what we're frightened of. Thanks, Scarlett. Jana.
Hi. I almost forgot why I put my hand up. That was, thank you, Scarlett. Just briefly about what you said, Sebastian, about doing taxes in the last couple of days. I've noticed that the reward, to do something for the reward is not so interesting for me. But if I'm avoiding punishment, or I would be letting people down if I don't complete whatever that is, that gets me moving. So I guess it's fear of letting people down. Punishment, I kind of not so strong motivation, but letting people down, it's the big one for me. And I think it was Deb was saying about easier to do little things. No, it wasn't Deb, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I found for me, it's easier to do bigger things than the little things. I guess I just don't have like a reward by completing little things. And I'm aware of that now. So when I catch myself and go, "Ugh, can't be bothered," I go, oh, no, it's fine. And then I put some bigger reward at the end of it, like going in the forest or something. And then that gets me moving. But originally why I put my hand up was because you was talking about what did we do that we didn't have time to think, or and I can think to one big thing, like 14 months ago, the real big thing, when my only motivator was I can't stay where I am and lose my dog, and I had no plan, and I just jumped off a cliff. I didn't have manual license. For 30 years, I was told, for 20 years, I was told I was too of a scatterbrain and too of an idiot to ever drive. But then I had one lesson and passed my test in an automatic car. And then 11 years later, like 14 months ago, I needed manual shift stick for American friends license. And everybody told me that even I couldn't pull that off. And I did within 8 days, learn to drive and pass the test. And I'm just thinking now, whenever something, I had no plan. When people says, how did you come up with that plan? I always say I didn't have a plan. My plan was just leave the country and get my dog out of there. That's it. And it kind of unfolded as it was, and universe aligned and provided things. But now when I'm in my business, I have to make phone calls to people, and I'm great at starting a conversation with strangers, but then calling them back, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do it. So I now think back, listen, you learn to drive manual and you drive in a big 6-meter diesel van. You can pick up a phone and talk to somebody. What's the worst that's going to happen? And I just kind of deal with that now. I think back to reference points where I just had to jump off. For me, I'm building up that habit like now, just making phone calls. You think, oh, you know.
The interesting thing that comes up for me with that, Janet, is that with both of those, again, coming back to what I said earlier, was there's a level of accountability.
Yeah.
So that fear of letting someone else down, you've got an accountability to someone else, right? You had an accountability to Ted, your dog, right? Because you had, and that was far more powerful than anything else. You just had to make a move, right?
Yeah.
So when you've got something like that and you've tuned into that, it's like, how can you trick yourself into, engage your magician? What can I do to actually help me? Because I know I do this, and I know that this helps. So this is why sometimes when you just declare to a bunch of friends, or declare on Facebook or wherever, I'm going to do this, because your brain will see that as accountability. I've now that I've told people I'm going to do it, if I don't do it, I'm letting them down.
Okay.
And maybe when you're like calling people back, you could actually say to them, I am going to call you back on such and such a day. You've then got an accountability to them to do it. So you're sort of, you've got that understanding of how you can trick yourself into putting yourself in that position where you know you're going to step up. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think it's being aware and actually using our experiences to empower ourselves. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Megan.
Thank you for that. I was just thinking I'm going to have to find another way to be held accountable, because I can declare something and I'll do well for a while and then I still fall off. But much like Jana, I can do the really big, scary, hard things. The two that came to mind for me was my late husband's funeral. I did not want to go. I didn't want to have to deal with that. I was terrified of the emotions. And then once I did it, I felt relieved and grateful that I did it. And then the second was testifying against my ex-husband, who I learned 60 days into our marriage that he was a sociopath, and he had lied, and so many people had let him get away with the horrific things that he had done, and they were so afraid of him they hadn't stepped up. And I knew I had to testify against him, and it was terrifying, but I knew I had to. I didn't sleep all night. I went in, I testified, and the judge was amazing and sentenced him to 17 years in prison. So afterwards, I felt brave and accomplished, and I felt like I had done something to help other people. And excuse me. That was gratefully the turning point that brought me to EMF and brought me here. And it was scary, but much like Scarlett, I used to be scared of spiders, and it made my fear of spiders seem so small. So now it just feels frustrating when I don't do these things that I know I can do. If I can do that, I can do anything. And yet I still don't do it.
Yeah, and as I said, so many of these things, when we know what we can achieve, and like the example, I don't know if you watched the masterclass on Thursday, but Jenny Rose was there, and she's a very bright person. She's a very capable person, technologically and everything. But she was having this mental block about setting up a squeeze page, right? These things are very rarely logical. Yeah, so don't beat yourself up. We're going to come up with some hints and tips. We do need to crack on. So, Krista, can we make it quite quick, if that's all right?
Sure. Just wanted to say, obviously, I've spoken to Megan about this story. She's inspired me a lot about fellow widows. Yeah, burying your husband is not an easy thing. So why am I still procrastinating about some shit? It's the thing we've done the hard things. So why on earth are we doing these things? So bravo to us for getting on with and being here, to be quite honest, So thank you.
Another thing to remember, guys, with these is that you've both stepped up and you've both managed those amazing things, but in the process you will have experienced an awful amount of trauma doing so. Okay, and that, although you managed to surpass that and survive that, and you had the courage to get through it, the trauma of doing so means that the emotions you experienced in the process were intense. Right, so it's only natural that actually, in many ways, that makes the resistance even greater, because it's the intensity of re-experience, it's the re-experiencing those really intense emotions that you're now really attuned to wanting to avoid. And it's the deeper the trauma that we have, very often the more powerful the resistance is. Does that make sense? So go easy on yourselves with that one. Yeah. So just quickly before we move on, then, what we were trying to get to was, when you had the courage to push through resistance, when you've had time to think about it, but you've pushed through anyway. So when we get to the other side, very often we feel that wasn't as difficult we thought, or actually I feel really, really pleased and proud of myself that I've managed to achieve that. And these are the, it's trying to remember to focus onto those positives as frames of reference that we can achieve, despite the fact the negatives that we're pre-programmed to keep coming back with will kind of overpower them. And the other thing with the example where you stepped into something without having time to think about it, that just demonstrates that we do have this power to do stuff, but it's only the language part that's putting doubt into our head and everything else. Because if we can completely bypass that language and that chatter that's like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do that. Like, if we can bypass that altogether, we can move straight forward without any problem at all in most occasions. So what I wanted to do now is sort of just give a couple of concepts as to how we can help navigate this, right, to make it a little easier. And the first thing that really struck me was even using the language, leaving our comfort zone, leaving, it's quite an overwhelming term. It almost kind of sets the scene that I've now got this nice, happy life, and if I want to grow, I have to leave my happy life and do something else, which isn't actually true. All we ever really have to do is expand our comfort zone. Very rarely is there anything we need to do, aside from maybe moving house, where you have to actually sell a house, and once I've sold it, I can't go back. But 99% of the time when we're looking to do something, it's like, well, if I post that video on Facebook anyway, I'm not going to lose my house. My arm isn't going to fall off. I'll still have food in the fridge, right? So we don't have to leave our comfort zone. We only have to expand it. And if you go back to the analogy I had with the garden fence, and the funny noise outside, and it makes us want to stay in the safety of the fence because we've associated this noise that we've made up as something scary. The first step is to open the gate and put your head out. You don't have to leave the garden. You don't have to leave your comfort zone. You just have to take a look what's out there. And as soon as you've done that, then your knowledge of what's immediately outside the garden, that becomes part of your comfort zone. And the next step is to, you know, walk out a little bit further, explore around the corner. And each step, the original comfort zone isn't disappearing. You're just making the comfort zone bigger by pushing the limits. All right. So, and the other thing is, if we take small steps, so Peter always talks about chunking things down, right? So the whole idea of doing my taxes, well, okay, so I'm here now with no taxes done, and my end state is to have this massive list of all my expenditure, all listed out, all categorized, so I can give it to my accountant, right? Well, what's the first step? Going to my bank and downloading the statements. That's it, right? So it's that taking that small step gives less space for doubt to come in. Can I download my statements? Well, of course I can, right? But then we know success breeds success. A win makes you feel good, so you go out to win. So you download your statements, and you're like, right, I've downloaded them now. Right, now I'm going to get the various different bank statements, put them all in one Excel spreadsheet, and then before you know it, you're going through them all and categorizing things, right? And before you know it, you spent 2 hours and you've got everything done, and you thought it might take you days. So if you chunk things down into small amounts, it gives less space for the doubt to creep in. Yeah. So we've also got so we talked about why. What's the why for moving out of your comfort zone? And actually what I kind of had a bit of a thought on this is to, when I went back to when I did EMF7 and we did the goals and purpose modules, and I really struggled with them because at that point I didn't know what my goals and purposes were, right? And it may be that some of us here on the call have a really clear idea of what your why is, and if you do, that's great. But some of you may not know what your why is. Some of you may just be in that space of, I don't like where I am now. I'm unfulfilled because I'm not nourishing those two soul-led needs, you know, my growth and contribution, but I actually don't know where I want to go. And if you're in that space, I'd say that's okay, because actually set the goal to have a goal. Your purpose is to have a purpose, right? And let go of everything else, because if you don't do the process of letting the weights off the balloons and bringing yourself to a place where you're open to receive what your goal or your purpose is, then you're never going to receive it, right? So it's a bit like having, you know, taking Essu Nick's analogy of the hot air balloon, right? What if there's a layer of cloud just above the balloon and you're not going to see what your goal is until you push through the cloud? So you need to do some of the work, let go of some of the weights, let go of some of the beliefs. Well, I can't have a goal. I'll never have a goal because I don't know what I want to do, and I'm obviously not imaginative enough enough or not tuned in enough, you know. No, you've got to let all of that go. So you take enough weights off the balloon, so you rise in consciousness enough to the point where you become the person you need to become for the goal to make itself apparent to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So and another point of that is because we're going to talk about identity, or she's going to come on and talk about identity in a minute. But it's like, if you haven't got a goal, it's step into the identity of who you would be if you were doing something that you loved. Right? If you could give up your day job and do something you loved instead, what else would that make you? What else would that give you in life? You know, and it might be the freedom to travel, the freedom to do this, the freedom to do that, or just the freedom to be your own boss. Yeah, so step into what that would give you if you were doing something you love. You don't need to necessarily know what it is you would love. So yeah, I think actually we can probably move on, Ishi. I'm just conscious of time as well.
Yeah, I'll be very, very brief. I think another way of expanding our comfort zone is to think about the identity of who it is that we are seeking to become. You know, rather than focusing on the doing, what do I have to do? Who is it that I want to become? So almost going to the end, I want to become this person, adopting that identity, and then almost bringing that back to who you are now, and then just taking one step at a time, you know, one step, and you find that when you do one step, the next one comes up, and then the next one comes up, But in terms of, you know, the identity, when you do adopt the identity, you almost find like the comfort zone kind of vanishes, because you're so kind of you're so kind of focused on who you are, who you've become now. It's almost like the comfort zone was attached to who you were before, so that who you are now, when you've, you know, achieved what it is that, so say for example, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an EMT example here, that you want to run, I don't know, like a central cohort, for example. You know, so you adopt the identity of someone who's running a central cohort, you know, which is one of the numbers, and you sort of think, how would I feel? How would I act? How would I behave if I was doing that? And then when you've done that, you then realize that the next steps that you might be fearful of doing, which is, for example, like applying for it or speaking to a member of Team Sage or putting yourself out there, all of those things just kind of dissolve, because you know that you are that person who's running a central cohort. So all those things just become like little kind of tick box things you have to do, and it doesn't have the fear attached to it because you are that person already. Does that make sense? So it's whatever it is that you want to do, adopt that identity, and then the steps you have to take to get there just become kind of with less emotion. So, and just think about, you know, what if you were to do that, what could go wrong, but also what could go right. You know, when our fear kind of kicks in, if I was to expand my comfort zone, what would go wrong? Well, also what could go right? You know, things that are more likely to go right if you've adopted that identity of who it is you know, want to become. So it's sort of going to the end point. And also just also have to ask yourself, what if I don't? What happens if I don't do what it is I'm being called to do? So just something to think about. But I think, Sebastian, that's all I'm going to say, because I am conscious of time when we do have the tapping exercise to do.
Yes.
Anything you want to finish with?
Yeah, so just very, very quickly then, yeah, just to sort of finish off then. So basically, yeah, when we have a calling, especially one that involves contribution and raising consciousness, we have to accept it's coming from something bigger than us, right? So there's this analogy which I'm always convinced that I came up with, but Carolyn keeps reminding me that Peter did it, which is be the bee, right? So a bee, when you think about a bee, like as far as they're concerned, their purpose is to go and collect nectar. That's it. They are completely unaware that they get pollen stuck to their legs. They're completely unaware that they fertilize and pollinate flowers and grasses. They are completely unaware that they play probably one of the most significant roles in the ecosystem on the planet, right? So it's a matter of, we all have a purpose, and our purpose is to follow what our purpose is, effectively. It's to follow what our calling is. Beyond that, we have no idea how big things are beyond that. And it's almost like, if we're allowing our limiting beliefs to stop us stepping into our purpose, we are denying the universe and everything that's supposed to benefit from us having that purpose. We're denying them what we're supposed to give, right? So basically what it comes down to is, effectively, what right do we have to not do what we're called to do? Yeah. To put it really bluntly, it's almost like, how effing dare you not do what we're called to do, right? So again, this is, you know, and especially if we're focusing on the place of service rather than ego, when we focus on, if I don't step into my role and my purpose of being the authentic me that's supposed to do what I do and do what I'm called for, then I'm not playing my role in service to the world. So it's not about me, right? And you know, when we talk about things like getting up on stage and doing talking, right? That, and Peter's mentioned this again. When we want to stand up on stage, if we focus on it's how we make the audience feel rather than how do I look and are people going to value me, it makes it easier because we're making it about them. So the more we can take it away from us in the point of stepping out, the better it is. All right, so basically we need to get out of our way and allow it. And this means letting go of the story, surrendering, let go of everything that's holding us back. And just accept that actually whatever we do, even if it turns out to be the wrong thing, the universe has always got our back. Right. And that's something that we've learned from EMF, right? If we follow our gut and we get it wrong, the universe will bring us back on path. Right. But ultimately, right, whenever it comes to anything like this, you only fail if you don't try. Okay, if you try, you're either going to win or you're going to learn. Right. So if the only failing is not doing, right, then you may as well try and have fun in the process. I know that's easier said than done, but it's a good message. It's almost like, let's flip this whole thing around. Like, so we flip the thinking around and get the mind to work for you. We have a choice as to how we think, right? So we start using our mind to find reasons why staying stuck is scarier, right? So the brain's always looking for the negatives. So get the brain to look for the negatives as to why staying in your comfort zone is not a good thing, right? In a year's time, do I still want to be where I am? Get your brain to start thinking out all of the bad things about staying where you are to make the idea of moving forwards better than staying where you are. Yeah. We were going to ask for a few shares at this point, but I think actually we need to crack on with the exercises and we'll share some time for shares at the end. Yes, so I'm going to pass back over to Issue.
And thank you. And I know there's a lot of stuff there. We will get the notes sorted because there is like so much in there. So, you know, we will do that. So, we're going to move on to the exercise now, the tapping exercise. So I think, you know, I invite you to sort of all get comfortable for this. And I'm just going to quickly explain what this exercise is going to be, sort of how it's going to be structured. So we're going to have 3 rounds of alpha tapping. I'm just going to ask you a few questions. So I invite you to sort of close your eyes, or if you want to close your camera, that's also okay. And then I'm going to ask you a few sort of questions. Sorry, I've said that, the questions. And then we will sort of tap to some statements. But this time I'm going to do it slightly differently. So we'll be tapping with the same statements. So if you're listening and thinking, oh, she's doing it differently, this is why. We're going to actually use the same statement 3 times and then go to a different one. So just so you're aware that what's going on there. And then I'll ask you a few more questions and then we'll finish off with alpha tapping. So if you feel at any point, just follow along with the process and see how you go. So, okay. So we're just going to start with the alpha tapping. As before, the first round we do, I will call out the points and then we'll do the second 2 rounds, just sort of you know, sort of in silence. And then I will start with the questions. So we'll make a start. So if you're comfortable, sort of tapping on the eyebrow point, take a deep breath in for 6 seconds. Side of the eye out. Under the eye in. Under the nose out. Chin in. Collarbone out. Under the arm in. Top of the head out. Do the next 2 rounds just in silence. Okay. I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes if you haven't already. And I'm just going to ask you a few questions to consider. So how do you feel when you think about expanding your comfort zone? When you think about doing the thing that you feel compelled to do, or being the person that you're meant to be? What do you notice comes up in your body? Tune into it. What are its qualities? What is its intensity? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very, very intense and 1 being not at all, how intense is the sensation in your body? I invite you just to make a mental note. And now I'm going to invite you to step into the version of you that has already expanded their comfort zone, on a doing the thing that you wish to, or being the person that you wish to be. Be that person. Be doing that thing. Step into that version of you now. What happens to that intensity? Just notice it internally. And we're going to start tapping on the eyebrow point, and we're going to say some statements. So I release my emotional attachments, side of the eye, to this sensation. We tap the rest of the points in silence while tuning in. And then we're going to say that same statement again. So back to the eyebrow point. I release my emotional attachments, side of the eye, to this sensation as it is now. And then the rest of the points in silence. I invite you just to tune in to that sensation. And we're going to do that again. So eyebrow point, I release all my emotional attachments, side of the eye, to this sensation as it is now. And then in silence. Mm. Now, our final statement, the eyebrow point. I choose to let it go. Side of the eye, right now.
Mm.
And in silence. Okay. I invite you to keep your eyes closed. And now I'm going to invite you to bring to mind again who it is you wish to become and what it is that you wish to do. Visualize as it's happening now. What do you notice now about the sensation? And what about the intensity? Just notice what you notice. Whatever you notice is absolutely right. And we're going to finish the exercise with just one round of alpha tapping. So in your own time, we just do one round with the breathing. And when you feel ready, I'm going to invite you to come back into the room. Is everybody okay? Let's get a thumbs up or not. Great. I am very, very conscious about time, but I would love to hear some shares, or just, I'm sure Sebastian would as well, and all of us would like to hear some shares. So because of the time element, I do understand if anybody does need to go. If you're happy to stay on a little bit longer, we are happy to keep the call going a little bit longer. So we'll leave it to you guys.
If anyone
Yeah.
does need to drop off, I would just encourage you to do a calming 3 rounds of alpha tapping after you've dropped off at some point tonight. But, yes, we'd love you to stay because we've got a little bit more to cover and we'd love some shares.
I'll go then. Hi. I'm sorry I missed last week, and I must admit I haven't done tapping except for the EMT call you did, which was quite nice. I had people looking at me in the office like, what is she up to? With my eyes closed, so that was quite fun. But yeah, actually, that was really, I felt the tension in my throat, like I'm not really stepping in my power when I was initially thinking the first round. And then at the end, I just felt, but at the same time, I felt the excitement in my belly. So it was a two-way, like the holding back and back and forth feeling of feeling excited but terrified. But yeah, the last round was very just like, yeah, easy peasy. Now if we can keep it up, that would be great. So yeah. Thank you.
Realised I'm on mute. What I meant is thank you for sharing. And what I meant to say is that the most common places people feel sort of things are usually in the face, the throat, the chest, the solar plexus. Those are sort of the main areas where people tend to feel. So if anyone gets alarmed at all when they get something in their throat, it's completely normal. I'm not saying you did, but I just wanted to put it out there. I've had clients before who've been a bit scared because they've had this kind of feeling in their throat. So I just thought I'd mention that. So, but thank you, Krista. No. Mel.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for making this collective opportunity available, because I don't think I'd be going anywhere near this resistance unless I was here in a group doing it, with lots of encouragement and prompting and context and everything else. And I, this evening in this exercise, experienced the sensation of my resistance. And I recognised it from last time we did this last week. It was the same sensation. And I'm very glad to be even looking at it, the sensation, because it is familiar. And I do a lot of avoiding. And this week it's a really strange transitiony kind of a week for me. My weekly patterns just changed. I just came off a cohort, and there's a lot of flux going on. I'm chucking things out of my physical environment. I'm having some really weird dreams every night. Really weird. I am tapping, but only without no words. I'm just doing except for yesterday and today, when I suffered the results of self-sabotage by eating hopefully the wrong thing in a huge amounts, but from craving it on Friday. Comfort zone stuff completely. So today I'm feeling quite tired because my body's still trying to recover from the way I loaded it up 2 days ago. And I'm conscious that this is all avoidance, even though I'm still getting rid of some stuff. So I've had 2 days of not meditating, not tapping, no, straight in the hole, basically, dig a big hole in the ground and get in it. I don't want to come out, but I just love that I come here to this session and I do go there. So thank you.
No, thank you, Mel. And I think all I'd say is that, as you go through this process, these 6 weeks or 7 weeks and so on, this is to everybody, just hold yourself gently. A lot of shifts are happening. Don't judge yourself. Just be the observer in everything that's happening. Whatever you feel called to do is probably right. And just don't beat yourself up.
No, I think I'm going to just get on with it and trust that it's okay. And I'm letting out sadness. I'm not letting it out. I'm noticing it. I need to let it out.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me because I've suppressed that stuff for a long time.
I mean, one way we could look at this is that because you're doing the work, part of your identity is recognizing that you're actually now stepping out. So it's kind of gone, no, hang on a minute, and it's pulled you back. So it's pulled you back into that comfort zone food and everything else. Right?
Yeah.
But take that as testament that you started to make a shift. Not that you've suddenly fallen back and failed. It's demonstrating that changes is happening.
Yes, and I can see them happening. So thank you. I'll keep going and take that.
Thank you, Mel. Megan.
Thank you. Yeah, much like Mel, I do a lot of avoiding and avoiding even recognizing the feeling. Obviously I recognize there's resistance, but just ignoring it completely for the most part. So at the beginning of this exercise, there was enormous pressure from my throat all the way to the solar plexus in a very, oblong shape. And by the end of it, it's just in my throat and lighter, which is great. But just lets me know that there's more work to be done. And also like Mel, like within like a week ago, I got rid of like 8 large bags of clothing from my house that no one in our house needed. And so it is interesting. I've been having trouble falling asleep and trouble staying asleep. Like I haven't been having the dreams that I'm aware of, but there's definitely shifting happening. I've not been tapping as much as many, I believe, but I actually, last week or the week before this past, I didn't do any tapping throughout the week, but this week I actually did, a few sessions throughout the week, which was nice. And again, another attempt at resistance is, well, I don't remember what words we said. I don't remember the statements. And so I've actually taken a couple of screenshots on my phone of what you're putting into the group, which is awesome, because then I can go back and go, well, which one would this be appropriate for? Or, which one do I need that would be more supportive for this? So that's been fantastic. So thank you both for this work. I wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for the two of you. Tapping is amazing, but yet again, resistance.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Megan. And, at any point you need any help or you just need some encouragement, just put something in the group. Just say, hey, I need a little bit of a push or whatever. And, we're here for you. As I say, Sebastian and I are on that group every day. So, or you can message us privately. And I think the clearing out and everything, the outer world reflects your inner world. So while there's shifts and clearing going on the inside, that's going to be reflected in the outside as well. We're going to have this need to clear our outer world so it reflects our inner world as well. So thank you for that, Megan.
Thank you, Ishi.
Jill.
I just wanted to, I've been going through this shift because I didn't realize it. I had actually been kind of training myself to be in stressful situations. I just was, like the job that I was doing for 9 years, it was very stressful. And so I was tuned into that. And then, anything else that came along, things that I was watching or, on the TV or wherever it might be, or just, talking with people and getting into stressful situations and so this has been really helping me to calm down, which I've known I've needed to do, and to start getting rid of things. Well, I'm not up to the physical part yet, like some of these other, other two people, but working on it and just trying to visualize more calming situations. And it's actually helping me now to approach the things I didn't want to do. I called myself a procrastinator, but it is actually having an effect on me as far as getting more things done and approaching it in a different manner. And just my whole demeanor, I feel like, has just changed. I'm just so much more calmer. And I don't want to go back to who I was before. That was not a very good situation to be in. And so yes, I'm very grateful for all of this. And of course, all the stories that are being shared from everybody, your stories are helping me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill. And I think, again, when the shift is happening, we can get a bit of an anxiety that, am I going to go back, when something stops, whether it's a course or something like that. Just set the intention that the changes is supporting you, the universe is supporting you, and that you will get the help that you need to maintain that that new identity, that new way of being. And also the support will always be there, even when the course finishes, the group will stay open. So, and you can reach out to us anytime and, we will always support you with that. Okay. Okay. Belinda.
Hi. Yeah, I too really appreciate the shares because it helps us to feel that we're not alone. I've been using tapping a lot since we've been doing it, and I've actually been sharing it with my family. I am going through so much at the moment. My dad, he's aged and he's moved and he's had some ill health, and I shared it with him. And he did it with me, which was great. I've shared it with my daughter, who has her marriage has just broken up, so that's really frantic at the moment. And my son yesterday went into hospital. So that's something that I didn't share the tapping part of it, but I shared the 6 breaths in, 6 breaths out. And he just wanted a way of feeling calm. They don't know what's going on, and he's been operated on this morning. So yeah, a hell of a lot of challenges coming my way, which is overflowing into many areas. I do procrastinate. I really would love to get my house straightened out. I've had stuff here from my husband's death coming up for 12 years ago now. And I've got stuff, so much stuff that are cluttering up my home, and I don't want it to be here. I want to be able to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But instead of allowing that to become something that really gets to me, and it does from time to time, really overwhelms me, I let go of it, because the things that are happening, I need to focus on. And the one thing I realize with tapping is the immediacy of the alpha, raising the level, changing my frequency level. And it just makes a whole difference, huge, huge difference. Yeah, and I wanted to encourage everybody that the work that we do and the coming together that we have and the sharing and everything else, we don't realize how much we actually do embody our learning. So I just wanted to encourage everybody in that, because there's so much we know from the inside, and sitting still, just being present, those things come to the fore. I get terribly busy, and I need to breathe sometimes and just be still, because I know what to do. It comes to me, and it will to you too.
Thank you, Belinda. And I think that's the power of doing these things in a group, as well as others have said. You know, you hear other people's story, you realize that you're not alone. You get encouraged to do the tapping because of others. But I'm sorry to hear about your son, but one thing you can do is tap for your own emotions on what's going on, and then that will have an effect on him as well. I mean, of course, it must be sort of frightening what's going on. And actually, I don't know, will we have time, Sebastian, to do this, what you had planned for the end? I think it would
Everyone's
actually be
happy to stay
valuable.
on, yeah, because I think what we've talked about today, because we've talked a lot in the first module, and today we've talked a little bit about how there's certain parts of our identity that are self-protecting. So they have these self-protecting mechanisms that are being run by an element of our identity that's trying to keep us safe. And very often that bit of our identity no longer knows why it's keeping us safe or what it's keeping us safe from, but it's just running the pattern anyway, right? So sometimes we can have a fairly good idea as to where this stuff has come from, and sometimes we'll have no idea. And what we wanted to do was to introduce some Ho'oponopono to the alpha tapping. And just to give a very brief bit of background, so Ho'oponopono roughly translate to make things right or to restore balance. And in some instances, like when I've used it in the past, you know, in relation to my relationship with my father, for example, who passed away many years ago, 20 odd years ago, it was a way for me to help move on and forgive him, right? But in this instance, I want us to focus. We can either think about it as saying it to ourselves, to that part of ourselves, or effectively to the divine, you know, with the view that we are all part of the divine, right? But it's about self-healing, okay? So it's focusing on healing through loving oneself, or healing through loving and forgiving that part of our identity, right? That shows love and, you know, and it's showing love and appreciation to that part of yourself that's been keeping you safe. So, I mean, you all know Ho'oponopono, right? So I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. So when you say I'm sorry, it's like, think about what does that mean to you in this respect? Like, I'm sorry. It could be that part of your identity that's saying, I'm sorry that I've been stopping you moving forwards, or part of that identity of, I'm sorry that I'm now letting you go. Please forgive me. So you forgive yourself maybe for some of the things that you are holding yourself accountable for having not done, because you've been hiding behind this self-protection mechanism, or whatever feels right to you. I'm not necessarily trying to prescribe to you, but just tune in. Thank you. And this might be one that's particularly important to thanking that part of your identity for having kept you safe, right? And I love you, right? So you love yourself, regardless of what's happened, regardless of what you've held yourself accountable for, regardless of the judgment you've given yourself. I love you, right? So with each point as we tap, going through the alpha tapping, and I know it's kind of breathing 6 in, 6 out, trying to think of the right word. So if you can't focus on the breathing at the same time, then just allow yourself to breathe naturally. And what I'll do is, so for each round, we're gonna say there are 8 points, and we'll say it twice, and we're going to go through it 3 times altogether. So everyone happy with what we're doing? Yeah, so we start on the eyebrow point. So, I'm sorry. Move to the side of the eye. Please forgive me. Under the eye. Thank you. Under the nose. I love you. Chin. I'm sorry. Collarbone. Please forgive me. Under the arm. Thank you. Top of the head. I love you. We'll just go through that 2 more times. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Just sit, relax, take a few breaths. Just come back to the room whenever you're ready. Now that in itself might have brought up a little level of resistance for you, because the notion of showing yourself self-love could be a little bit alien. And if that's the case, then tune in. You feel as to whether it's best to just repeat that or continue doing some silent alpha tapping, whatever feels best for you. But if it has brought up some resistance in itself, that's good. And if it's brought up some emotional release, that's good.
Thank you, everyone. Apologies for overrunning, but we just felt it was important to do this. And if you guys like this, then we will incorporate this in our sessions. And take it easy, be gentle. The group is there. Anything at all, we're here for you. And we'll talk soon and see you next week.
Don't forget to hydrate, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love.
Bye. Have a good week.
And you.
I'm yawning. old release. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay.